on Daf Ayin Ches Amud Beis. So we saw on the top of the Amud, we saw the rule that Min B'She'ein Mina is B'Taima. That means if you have a little bit, I just wanted to actually go back to what we had said yesterday about Bittul and Shishim. We always say Bittul is B'Shishim. That's when you have Min B'She'ein Mina, that we say it's B'Taima, standard Tam is 1 in 60. That means unless you have less than 1 in 60. For example, like when we talked about like the blood will be bottled in water, that was chazusa. So if it's 1 in 60, then it's totally bottled, and it's you're not even going to see it. Same thing over here. Minch b'she'ein amina we say is the time. If you have a little bit of, I'm just going to give an example. I don't know if it really is true. Let's say you have a little bit of pig fat. If it's 1 in 60 in your soup, so then it doesn't even have a tam. So, but if it has a tam, it's going to be also. It's not going to be bottled if it is a tam. But min b'minoi, it's min b'minoi is beroiv. You have to have, as long as you have a roiv of kosher, and let's say you have pig fat in regular fat.
Without tam.
No, then the tam is not relevant. Right. We have a hard, there we have a much lower standard. I mean, tam is, when we're talking about something of isser, being bottled and something of heter, so if the min b'ein aminoi, as long as there's a tam, you're out of luck. But min b'minoi, you could have even up to 49%, as long as there's 51% of heter, it's going to be bottled. That was what we said on the top. If we asked on that, why don't we always say, well, even when it's min b'minoi, we saw in our Mishnah, this concept of royan, that we look at the thing that has the same tam, right? We said in the Mishnah we're talking about
wine, right?
Dam with wine, so chazusa was the same. There's two options. It could be chazusa, it could be tam, the appearance. Right. It could be one or the other, whichever one is relevant in that. In a mikveh, you talk about chazusa and the legabe dam for not for eating, but for being zayrik. It depends on its appearance. So we said royan. If you have two things that are different but the same appearance or the same taste, then we look at the thing that's aser as if it's a different min, and then we judge whether it's a nice and tam or its appearance. So back to Gemara. My love, royan oisel yayin kilu mayim. So first one to say royan oisel dam kilu mayim. We have to say no. It means a different thing. It means when it says in the Mishnah royan, it doesn't mean royan that we look at the iser as if it's a different min, but rather it just means we look at the dam over there as if it's mayim, meaning that it's going to be aser because the dam is not going to be able to. You're not be able to zrika with it because the dam is bottle. Just say bottle. Why is it saying bottle? So there really is a din of royan. That's not going to work. But you also have a brisa that says directly a din of royan. This is talking about if someone had a kli that was tameh and he wants to be taivel it in the mikvah. But there are different, it has some white wine or it has chalav, milk. For some reason, the Gemara always looks at milk as being the same as water. As being, I don't know why, it's treated as clear. They're both white, just the same with white wine. And to me, white wine and milk don't look the same, but maybe fresh milk looks different than what I think it does. But it's always looking at it as if it's the same as water and white wine. So if you have that in the kli, though that's not mei mikvah, so we say we're going to look at that white wine or that chalav as if it's red wine, and im dia mareu kosher, and they're going to have enough. It's going to be aser the inside of the kli that it's not going to be able to be a kosher tefillah unless there's a small enough amount of this wine, this white wine or this chalav in the kli, that if you were if you were to fill up the rest of the kli, it would be batal in the kli, and you wouldn't see it anymore, and then you could disregard it and treat it as if it was all, the inside of the kli was all filled with mikveh water. The imlav possible, but if not, it's possible. So you see, you're saying Ryan. So
Yehuda says Ryan.
Yeah, Yehuda. It's probably best to put Rabbi Yehuda on the side, because Rabbi Yehuda himself there's a lot of Rishonim that you try to make him consistent. So in any case, you see that our Mishnah says Ryan. We concluded that our Mishnah says Ryan, and the Bryce over there also says Ryan. The Gemara Tanoi, it's a machlokes Tanoim of whether there's such a thing, a min b'mina is b'rayiv, or whether on min b'mina you're going to say Ryan, the Tanya. Now we're going to say over this Bryce that we just said that says Ryan. I'm going to say that Bryce itself has two Tanoim. It's a Tanakama together with Yehuda. Deli, a bucket, yesh ba yayin lavanei chalav, that has in it white wine or milk. Vitvilai, so it was a deli that was tamei, and you would toivel it. You follow the roiv as long as less than half of the bucket. Just to give you a little background of this bucket, right? When you put something into the mikvah, you can be retire something, a bucket by being toivel in the mikvah. But if it has a chatzitza, it's not going to be bottle. So we're saying this Bryce is understanding that when you put a bucket with liquid inside of it, since the bucket is a kli, it keeps what's inside of it. So therefore, if it's bottle to the water of the mikveh that goes into the buckets, then it will be a good tefillah. But if it's not bottle, then it's going to be a chatzitza, and it's not going to be a good tefillah. So we're saying we go after the rive. The Tanakama says as long as most of the bucket is filled with the mikveh water, it's only filled to 49%. So the tefillah is a good tefillah. If you do he says no, you're not so fast. We say Ryan. So even though it's less than half of the bucket is filled with this white wine, we look at it as if it's red wine, and red wine gives an appearance of something else, of something different than water. They're unlike the milk and the white wine. And therefore, as long as there's enough to give an appearance, which is a pashtus 1 in 60, it's not going to be a kosher tefillah. In diamareu kosher, if there's little enough, less than a 60th that it can get rid of the appearance of even red wine, then it's going to be kosher. And lav possible. So it's a machlokes of whether you say right. Similar case of a deli, a bucket that you're trying to be taivel. If it's full of saliva and you taivel, then it's not a tefillah. That's a mamish, like a reik is very thick. So therefore, it's a mamish chatzitza. It remains separate. It doesn't become part of the water. Meiraglaim, royan esakilu mayim. On meiraglaim, we say a din of royan. We look at it as if it's, even though it's a very different application, but we're saying the din of royan, that we're going to say it's similar. We're going to look at it as if it's wine, as if it's water, and therefore we're going to say there's a separate din that water. When you put a bucket of water into a mikvah, it doesn't become, we don't say that the water inside of the kli is a chatzitza, since it's not mikvah water, but rather we say there's din of hashaka, that once the water touches the other water, it all becomes mikvah water. So say ma'araglaim, we're going to say royan as if it's water, and it's going to become also. So this is lakula, as opposed to before when we're saying royan lechumra, but we're saying the din of royan.
So that by milk?
By milk, we said that we royan the milk as if it's bread milk. Over here, we're saying we'll look at the meraglayim, since it's so close to water, we look at it as if it is actually water. But it's like Rashi says, it looks slightly different than regular water. You say Ryan, which is really Lakula. But we see you saying a din Ryan. And finally, the Braisa over there says, Mole Mechatas, if it's full of Mechatas, meaning the water that's used from the water with the ashes of a paradum that's used to be mitar someone. Now that Mechatas itself has a din of a rishon. It's a what do you not a rishon. I think it's a rishon l'tumah. It has a din of that it's tummy itself. It's an avatuma. I'm sorry, that's the word I was looking for. It's an avatuma. So therefore it doesn't become bottle. It has a certain chashiv. It's not bottle. Until you have more water than the mechatas. Man shamale de isle Ryan. Until you have a roiv of, unless you have roiv of regular water in the deli, which will be mevatel the mechatas.
That's every mikvahs have more. Also, a huge leak.
No, we're talking about in the kli that you put into the inside, the water inside of the kli has to be. That's what we're talking about. We're trying to evaluate.
It's hard to know.
What's inside the kli? Well, why is it hard to know? Is that the 50% mark full or not? That's what we're talking about the whole time. We're talking about the deli before also. We're talking about with the milk and the wine. We say if there's a 60th of the kli is full, then we say royan esekilu, it's yain edom, and yain edom won't be diluted unless it's less than a 60th.
Okay.
So then we say royan. So man shamalei de islay royan Rabbi Yehuda. The second thing that we said of Meir Glan royan is Rabbi Yehuda. Uktani de sagalei beruba. But on the last thing of mechatas, we say that it's enough as long as you have a roiv of the other. We don't say that royan I say as if it's something that is a different appearance than the water of the mikvah. Rabbi Eloi Kasha, hadidei hadirabbe. This is Rabbi Yehuda is being chaylik on his Rebbe. That means that which we said royan is really Rabbi Yehuda's Rebbe. Yehuda himself says, like we said at the end of the Braisa, that mechatas is beroiv, and like we said, min b'mina is beruba, and we don't say royan. That's all Rabbi Yehuda. And his Rebbe, Rabbi Gamliel, holds, we say royan. The Tanya, Rabbi Yehuda Aima, B'Shem Rabbi Gamliel. Yehuda says over B'Shem Rabbi Gamliel, not his own word, but what his Rebbe says. Ein dam mevatel dam, and ein roik mevatel roik, ve'ein reglaim mevatel meraglaim. He says if you have dam, it's not going dam that's we're talking legabi zrika on the mizbeach or legabi kisui, or it's not going to. If you have some that's possible for it and some that's kosher, or if you have roik, if you have saliva that's tar, it's not going to be mevatel. This is all talking about Pashas. We're talking about where it's a zav. It's tamei tum zav. So we're saying if you have dam that was not tamei from a zav mixed with dam that was tamei, or saliva mixed with saliva, or meraglaim of a zav with meraglaim of a regular person, all of these it's not going to be bottle because we're going to say royan. We're going to look at it as if it's something that's not the same appearance, and therefore you're going to have 60 times as much in order for it to be bottle. So you see that according to Rabbi Yehuda B'Shem Rabbi Gamliel, we say royan, but Rabbi Yehuda himself doesn't agree to royan. Rava has a different answer to this. He's not saying that it's Rabbi Gamliel, it's Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi. Rava Amar B'Dlisha Teichei Tar. We're talking about over here a bucket that the inside is tar. That means there's, Rashi says, Delisha toiche toy v'gabe tomi kegoin shenit magabe betumas mashkin derabanan. Kaimon oignoi oizna v'yadav tohirin. That there's a tumah that can go midirabanan that only goes on the outside of a kli. So the Medina sagi lahu b'choldu. Really, such a kli, all you have to do is put the outside into the mikveh. It doesn't make a difference what's inside of it. So what do we care that inside is mechatas? That we're saying the mechatas is going to be batal b'raiv. So the reason is because in order to get to the edge of the kli, you have to put the whole thing in. And if you want to get the entire outside, you're going to have to inevitably get a little bit of water into the kli. The Chachamim, I say you have mechatas. We all know the paraduma is very valuable. The person has a little bit of mechatas inside of the kli. We're worried that when he's doing the outside, he'll stop with like a quarter of a centimeter around the edge, because he doesn't, just like when you put the wine into the Kiddush cup, unless you're Hasidish. You're Litvak, you leave like a little bit of room because you don't want it to spill up and make a mess. So this is the reverse. When you dip it into the mikveh, you're going to leave like a little bit. You're not going to want the water to pour into the inside because that will ruin your mechatas. So therefore, the Chum Geyser, that you have to, it's not going to be tar unless you have more than 50% of mikveh water inside to make sure that you actually make it overflow the kli. But once it has a riboy, that's enough. That's why it's nothing to do with the din of that you say you say royan, and therefore you need to have inside enough mikvah to be mevatel a little bit of mechatas. It's a whole different din. Amar Rabba. Amar Rabbanim b'taima, v'amar Rabbanim b'ruba, v'amar Rabbanim b'chazus. The Rabbanim, this is the clarification of what we've said. The Rabbanim say you need, certain cases you need time, right? Like it depends, some things depend on timer. Something that you eat, it's going to depend. If you have milk mixed with meat, it's going to depend on whether there's a tam. If you have mim b'she'en, as we're going to explain in the Gemara, if it's mim b'she'en mina, it's going to be a tam is going to passel. And the Rabbanim say beruba, that's by mim b'minoi. Amram b'chazusa, you're talking about a mikveh, for example, we're talking about the dam that goes on the mizbeach, that's going to depend on the appearance. Mim b'she'en mina b'taima, like we just said, mim b'mina b'ruba, and heichadi chazusa b'mara. Those things that are dependent on appearance, it's not really set up the way I would have liked it. I would have said you have taima and you have chazusa, and then you have ruba, because taima and chazusa are two different categories. Things that are batam depend on tam when it's min b'she'en amina, and things that depend on chazusa when it's min b'she'en amina. And then you have the other category of min b'minai, which there's no such thing as chazusa or tam. Then it's beruba.
Yeah, but this is very nice, the Gemara. This is like a thesis or a Rashi would do that.
Right. It's funny that the Gemara gives a summation.
Out of nowhere. I guess the Gemara is recognizing we come to the difficulty.
Maybe. Yeah. So Upligadur Rebbe Elazar, right? If you remember from yesterday, we had said, Reish Lakish said, if you have a person who was eating pigol, let's say, and nicer, two things that are aser, he said you're going to be potter from Malkus. And we said because of three things. One was that he said, Shemamizah, Isam Mevatl and Isser. Even though both things are aser, they could still have a dim bittel. Bittel is not just a heter, it was an Isser, give me two Isurim. Says Rebbe Elazar disagrees with this. Rebbe Elazar, Dam Rebbe Elazar, Kashem She'em Mitzvahs and Vatl Zusu, Kach and Isurim Mevatl and Zusu. Just like if you have two mitzvahs, two things that you're supposed to do, they're not mevatel one another, so too, isurim are not mevatel one another, and therefore, we wouldn't say over there, in the previous case of Rabbi Rish Lakish, we wouldn't say that it's going to be batal. Now, where does this come from? That mitzvahs are not mevatel zuasu. Man shamali damar ein mitzvahs mevatel zuasu. Hillel, that's Hillel. We're all familiar with this Hillel. At least the one thing we could all know from Hillel. The Tanya Amar Alav al Hillel Azaken shar karchem b'vasachas. He would do the matzah and the maror together with the carbon pesach. He would make a sandwich of it like we do. The Torah says you should eat the pesach al matzah sumbarim. So he would make a sandwich to eat them all three together. The taste of the maror is going to be mevatel, the taste of the Pesach. It's a very strong taste. It's very bitter, so you're not going to be able to taste it. He says, mitzvahs are not mevatel mitzvahs. So it's the same way, mitzvahs are not mevatel mitzvahs, averos are not mevatel averos. Tan Rabban, charson shalzov. You have a chamber pot that the person puts in the meraglayim. So, charson shalzov is zava. You had a chamber pot of a zav or a zava. So the meraglayim of a zav or a zava is tameh. Pamrishan v'sheni tameh. If you cleaned it out, you rinsed it with water once or twice, it remains tameh. Shlishi tar. The third time it comes out, and it's the little bit of meraglayim that was absorbed comes out, and it's bottled in the water. That's where he did water. But if he didn't do water, but rather he just used this chamber pot 3 times himself, so he used this meraglayim on the chamber pot, not as a zav, but someone who's not a zav used it. So it's not tameh dika meraglayim. Afilu asiri tameh. Even the 10th time it's tameh. It's min b'minoi, and min b'minoi is not mevat. When Yaakov Omer shlishi on the 3rd time, afal bishul l'soichei mayim tar. He says meraglayim the 3rd time can be mevatel. He disagrees. He doesn't say that shlishi is not going to be metar. Man shamali da amar min b'minoi loy batel. Who's the man da amar who says min b'minoi is not batel? The first man da amar who said that meraglayim is not going to be batel. The chaylik on Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, Rabbi Yehuda. That's Rabbi Yehuda of our Mishnah. Raminu frak the Gemara pishtan shetavasa nida. You have flax that was spun by a nida. So the Gemara doesn't say this clearly, but when a woman spins flax, when she spins threads, they used to stick their finger in their mouth and use a little bit of saliva to help along the process. So we get a little saliva of a zava, or nida, I'm sorry. So mesita tar. If it dries up and then and someone moves that thread, they're going to be tar because dried up saliva is not metama. But if it was still moist, masita tame. If someone moves it, it's tame. Hasata is metama by a nida. Mishumashka pia. Like we explained, because of the saliva from her lips that goes onto the thread, and if it's lach, then it's going to be metama with moving. Yehuda af haroit b'mayim tame mishumashka pia. He says, even if it was dry and it wasn't moist from her lips, but it was dried out. If you reinvigorate that saliva by mixing water into it, so it's no longer dry, it's tamei atzmashka pia. Afilu tuva. And even if there's a ton of water, it's still going to remain tamei. So you see, he's saying that the mashka, that even if you do this many times, it's still going to remain tamei from that little bit of saliva. We said that you can, Rabbi Yehuda said before that min b'minoi is not bottle, and now he's saying if you do it a lot of times, it's going to be tamei. Man shamli da'amar min b'minoi bottle. Remini pishon shedavasa nidus sita. The question is that we said before that if you wash out the charson, the meraglayim of a zav, if you do it, no one disagreed that if you wash it out with water, that it's going to come out and it's going to be tar. So why are we saying over here, afilu tuva, even if you washed out the thread with the saliva of a nida, that even if you did it many times, it's still going to remain tamei. Amrapapa shani roik dekar. Roik is different because it's thicker, and once it gets into the threads, even if you wash it out many times, it doesn't come out as easily as meraglayim, which once you do it 3 times, everything that's in there has come out. The end of the Mishnah, we had said that that which we say that you have a tarubas of let's say dam of a kosher animal, that it becomes tar, that it got mixed with the tar, the dam of the carbon. The dam of a kosher animal got mixed with the dam of a animal that you want to be zyrek. So we said what the din was. There's different eitzes, because if it's bottle, but we said if it's mixed with dam hapsulin, meaning dam of a revei of a nirva, or that was a chutzl zmani, a chutzl kaimai, then there's no eitzah. You pour it out into the ditch that takes the dam out of the Beis Hamikdash. It's disposed of. And then we said a machlokes that, but let me just see who it was. A lot of things. Rebbe Eliezer says it's kosher. He says you don't have to pour it out. You could still be zarek that dam, even though it has mixed. Well, to be clear, it says nisar b'dam psul yishafach la'ama, b'dam tamtzaf yishafach la'ama. We said two separate dinim of dam psulim, and then we said dam tamsis, and then we said Rebbe Eliezer says it's kosher. So v'zok the Gemara. But my kamiflagi, what's a machlokes Rebbe Eliezer and Tanakama? Rav Zid, the goyzim gzeir b'mikdash kamiflagi. The question is, will they make a gzeira? As Rashi explains, that this is something that's not so typical that you should have. I'm sorry, this is something that is typical. The things before, when we were talking about regular dam of a regular animal, rarely got into the Beis Hamikdash. But dam, strangely enough, dam of Rashi gave the example of chutzl zmani, chutzim kaimai. I don't think that's, or revei v'nirva. I don't know how that's so common, but these things are more common. So the question is, can we make a gzeira that we're worried about, since this is something that's shchiach? Are we worried that if we allow it to be done to continue the avodah when it's a roiv of the kosher, you might come to do it even when it's a roiv of the psul? The problem is that if you make a gzeira, the chachamim are going to make a gzeira that's going to come out. You're not going to be able to do this rikas dam of this carbon. You're going to have to dispose of a kosher carbon, which is certainly problematic. So the question is, do the chacham make a gzeira that will result in the disposal of a kosher carbon? The marsa of a geysin, according to the Tanakama that says nishafech ba'ama, he says we'll make a gzeira in spite of the fact that you're causing the bittul of kosher. Marsa of a geysin. Rapapa amad kli ama geysin. Everyone really agrees that we're geyser. That's not a question. And Rav Papa says that this first din that we said, that if it's mixed them with dam psulin, that it's going to be batal b'roiv, that it's nishafach ba'ama, that's l'kuli alma. The machlokes Rebbe Eliezer and the Tanakama was only with dam atamtzis. Which is the second din that we said in the Mishnah, and afterwards you said Rebbe Eliezer is only being chalik on the second din. The question is whether this din of dam atamtzis mixing in with dam hanefesh, with the dam from the actual dam atamtzis is the leftover dam that drains out. Dam hanefesh is the lifeblood that's kosher for the avodah. The question is, how is it common for there to be enough dam atamtzis that drains out to be more than dam hanefesh? Masav shchiach. One man the Amr holds it's shchiach, so therefore it is something that there's a reason to make a gzeira for. It's like the dam psulim. Masav lo shchiach. And the other man holds it's not shchiach, and therefore there's no need for a gzeira. Zakt Gemara Bishlam Rav Papa Hanutan Nisar b'dam psulin yishafach la'ama b'dam atam yishafach la'ama. According to Rav Papa, the second pshat, so you understand why the Mishnah considered dam psulin separately from dam atamtis. Why don't we say if it's nisar v'dam hapsulin or b'dam atamtis? What does it say? Nisar v'dam hapsulin yishafach lama, then dam atamtis yishafach lama. It's all the same din, and Belez is chalik on both of them. So Gemara kasha, it's a fair kasha. You are correct. Okay, we're going to stop over here and